take this seriously.
Hello, we're Oski XD Doski. We're going to introduce ourselves.
Hey, this is Oski from Oski XD Doski. Hailing from Miami, I play acoustic guitar, program drums, and try to sing.
Oh, hey, I'm X or Alex, whose X kind of sucks now. And I play the bass, and I try to program drums sometimes.
So I'm the D, Danny. I play the synth.
And I'm Doski. I also play guitar and share in vocal duties. Today we're talking about how we got together, fell apart, and somehow found our way back through the magic of the interwebs.
So me and X go way back to middle school, and then me and Danny also go way back about freshman year. We shared similar musical interests, punk rock, metal, and then if I am not mistaken, Doski, you and I met in a classical guitar class. We had a great teacher. He had a cerebral palsy or something, so he was confined to a wheelchair, but his mind was just like musical computer. He also was in charge of the rock ensemble. And so this kind of made the class cool because it gave us a lot of opportunity to goof off in the back while he was like with the real musicians. The rest of us would be in the back playing Nirvana and like, hey, just check out this Megadeth song.
Yeah, so I want to add that I did get kicked out of that class. We formed Garland's Room at the time, and it was myself and then X. So we were doing a lot of just experimental surf rock.
When people used to ask us what we sounded like or whatever, I used to like to say Sonic Youth meets the Stray Cats, kinda. That was like my favorite description. Even though like a lot of people would be like, who and who? It was a good time. We were together for like a long time until like about 1998 or so. I was like the guy like that already graduated high school that was still hanging out with all the high school kids. So I'd show up in my jalopy over at Beach High, and like 15 people would get in my car, and then we go over, straight to Miguel's house and go practice there. So it's kind of like a big hangout.
There's also a little pre-Garland's Room history. Back in your 71st Street apartment, we would often bust out the acoustic and your bass, and we would make little terrible songs.
Right.
Was that Silas?
It could be considered convivial youth against society.
That's right. Almost forgot about them.
And Danny, weren't you in, was it the Fug Lords or the Kims?
No, not the Kims, but Fug Lord. That was just O and I and a drum machine and a sampler, along with like O playing guitar and myself on bass.
Yeah, I gotta give D credit because he's kind of the one that introduced like a lot of the, I guess, non-standard instruments. Like he had a lot of pedals, he had a sampler, he had the synth. Like he even had a theremin for a hot minute. So Dan was always interested in cool techie stuff like that.
So how did you guys form Hideous Idiots?
So Fug Lord, me and D had been playing on and off for years, recording on this 4-track Tascam. Remember, Danny?
Oh yeah, this goes back to the late 90s. We actually played live twice, 2 disastrous shows.
We sounded great, but there was nobody there.
I think we sounded terrible, but
so yeah, Danny and I had been playing for years, just really kind of industrial punk metal music. And then, if I'm not mistaken, Doski, you kind of dropped in one day on one of the jams, and Danny moved over to the synth, and you picked up the bass, and we recorded a song called The Veteran.
Right.
You remember that, Doski?
I do. I don't remember playing bass on The Veteran.
Yeah, because my bass
Yeah.
was like, I had my bass there at O's apartment, and I also had I had just recently gotten into synth because I was like taking MIDI classes, and I was really interested in synth stuff. So then you picked up the bass and you played, and I switched over to the synth.
Oh, that's awesome. So that
was like the
our
turning point.
First song as a band. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I still think The Veteran is the best, bass playing in the entire, catalog of the Hideous Idiots.
Fug Lord's sound was really abrasive and punk rock and
industrial,
kind of and industrial and metal, but The Veteran kind of marked the departure for that. It was more surfy and sensitivo and really catchy as hell.
Yeah, it was definitely catchy. It was more playful, more like we let our guards down. We were just about having fun doing the type of music that we enjoy.
And then Alex, you you heard the song and you kind of had been on a little bit of a musical hiatus, aside from just doing drum and bass music on your own?
I don't know. I liked what you guys were doing, and when you guys came a knocking, I was like, hell yeah, let's do this. But I also want to give a special shout out to the Fug Lord, because as they say, the Fug Lord produced the most guttural sounds.
We did produce the most guttural sounds. So anyway, quick segue. We made a lot of music with the drum machine. Either I would program the drums or Danny would program the drums, and we got pretty good. And then a friend of ours bought a rinky-dink drum set, and we started playing locally. We actually recorded some pretty cool songs. If you want to go on YouTube, we have a cool video, Stumble on You. But then alas, real life stepped in. People got married and people moved away. And eventually it came to the point where the Hideous Idiots were no more, even though we had played a lot of cool live shows. Here in Miami, Churchill special shout out. Doski landed in the Atlanta area, Dan in LA, and X in the Boulder, Colorado area.
We all kept making music on our own. We were all home recording ourselves. And then Oski had shared a song that he had written, and that kind of sparked us communicating about music again and kicking around the idea of collaborating. So we searched deep into the internet for something that we can collaborate remotely, and we found BandLab.
Those of you unfamiliar with BandLab, it's a website where you can go on and record on 16 tracks on the free version. And this is not a commercial for them. It's just our musical process being divided by so much geography. We can't jam, which is definitely a hindrance, but also kind of introduce a new way of songwriting, I guess.
I just gotta say, we gotta give a big shout to BandLab, because I mean, without them, we wouldn't be doing any of this at all. So I think that's a bomb website that we could go in there and basically, like, the four of us being in different cities, we can just, somebody throws something, and then somebody, all of a sudden I can't sleep at 3 a.m. I'll jump in and, I hear something in my head, and then I'll record something. And then, the next morning you guys hear it when you wake up, and then, suddenly like you hear like a new version of that same song, and then get inspired, and we just keep layering and layering and layering. And I don't know, I think it's pretty awesome that we can do that right now.
It is pretty rad. Can we get a sponsorship? We need money, BandLab.
I think one of the first songs we wrote was Elixir Field, right?
Elixir Field, I guess you could say I started that one. Elixir Field presented the challenge and early on of like, how do we write a song when we're separated by distance? So I had this riff that I had been playing with. It was, I guess you could say, a verse riff that had like a little bit of like chorus in it. And I recorded maybe like a 30-second snippet of it with basic drums, and it kind of just sat there dormant. And then I guess Doski liked it, and he looped the hell out of it.
I spliced the song and just copy pasted a lot of Oski's guitar playing, and then added a second layer with my guitar playing to that. And then Oski was inspired by that, and he started writing lyrics. And then so I added lyrics to the part that he left blank, so that way we kind of switched back and forth between the two singers. And then X jumped in and added his bass.
Before we transition to our next song, Danny, I kind of get the feeling that you like this song because you think it's a little reminiscent of our Hideous Idiots days. Is that would that be accurate?
That would be a fair assessment. Well, that song was a challenge because at least for me, like all the songs, I'm adding my part last, and I've been using the arpeggiator, which is, back in the day we would have just connected it to the drum machine via MIDI. So now I'm just having to match the BPMs on the drum track. So sometimes that poses a challenge because it's not really synced up. I have to do it by ear, and then a lot of cut and paste to line things up.
I love your keyboard sound on that song. It kind of reminds me of the Hideous Idiots days. So the term Elixir Field, just so you know, I am a certified Qigong instructor. Elixir Field is a term for an energy source, your life force in your gut, basically. And I just thought it sounded like a really cool term. And so it just hit me. Dancing in the Elixir Field just sounded sounded really, really cool. And we do videos for every single song we release. And this is a cool video if you have a chance to check it out, where there's some dancing, and I use a lot of old footage, public domain stuff. What's that guy, Danny, that you consider the master of like early silent movies?
Of VFX, George Méliès.
Yeah, I use a lot of his footage. It's really cool. Check it out. It's a fun dancey tune. Wouldn't you agree, Doski?
Oh yeah, it has a really fun vibe to it. It's a little sloppy here and there, but I think that just sounds very organic.
It's a punk rock ethic, being sloppy, but who cares? It sounds good enough.
That's right. Oski, how did you come up with Shoe Gum?
Yeah, I just picked up the guitar and just started strumming, came up with the cool song, and then I was driving, listening to the rough track, was singing along, and I busted out my phone and just recorded kind of like the melody. How about you, man? When you're writing your songs, you don't have any preconceived notion. You just pick up the guitar, right?
Right. We're always in the car commuting here in Atlanta. I always record myself with the voice app, and then so I'll record ideas or hum the melodies, and then usually when I get to an instrument that becomes something else.
Having been playing music together in one form or another for over 3 decades, that when we restarted this project, even though we're separated by distance and using a program that has latency issues, that's always a challenge, and we can't jam out live songs, I don't think we've missed a beat. I think we kind of picked up where the Hideous Idiots left off, and we're making pretty awesome music.
We're in 3 different time zones, so we can all record at our own accord whenever life permits. You know, everybody's got their own schedule, their own thing going on, so you could just lay down your track at your own leisure. You know, you add your part. So it would be completely impossible to do this cross country. I mean, I think there's a certain rawness that will never rekindle that we had when we played as Hideous Idiot, because there's something that we're missing out on. You know, there's like a synergy by being in the same room at the same time. But, you know, this is a good alternative. Something is better than nothing.
Well, I mean, all you got to do is just kind of like listen to some of the earliest songs that we recorded, and then, you know, kind of listen to some of the newer stuff that we're working on. Basically collaborating on music remotely. I mean, I would have to say that the good outweighs the bad by far. And also, you know, Dan was talking about, you know, like we lose something by not being in the same room at the same time. And that is absolutely spot on. This is like making music in a different kind of way. Hey, put it this way. If you, Doski, or Oski would be like in the same room with me, I'd probably be looking at your fingers, you know, try to figure out what you're playing, and then kind of imitate that, you know, on my bass. And so this time, instead of looking at your fingers, I'm kind of like listening to what you're actually playing, and that's a completely different type of, you know, learning the song myself. And then I come up with things in a different sort of way than I would if I were just be looking at fingers and listening or whatever. You know, it's forcing us to think differently, and I don't know, I think that's kind of cool.
There's a bit of a learning curve, I guess, with the software, and also figuring out the latency was an issue in the beginning.
It was such an issue that I wanted to call us the latency issues at one point.
I thought it was latency field.
That was one of them too. So a couple years ago, I wasn't listening to so much punk rock anymore. Was listening to a lot of acoustic stuff, the Beatles, Nick Drake, Bob Dylan. I was like, oh, maybe I could just buy an acoustic since I'm not part of a band anymore. So I bought a mahogany guitar that's really sweet. It's a Martin. It's not a plug-in though. It's not an electric acoustic. So I have to mic it, and that's challenging, especially with the mic I use. It's a good mic, but it's really kind of like a podcasting mic. To compensate for the lack of being able to plug in and really crank it up, sometimes I started layering my guitar quite a bit. But what I also discovered is that when you layer the guitar and you don't just duplicate the track and you play it live, it creates this cool like effect of like, because a human can never perfectly replicate what he's playing. And then if you put in a different effect on it, you put like a chorus effect on one guitar, like a little distortion on another guitar. It sounds really cool. And if you listen to our music, you can hear a lot of that layering.
X has got to go pick up his daughter, so make sure to follow, subscribe to our YouTube, Instagram. We're all over. Thank you for listening.